Hi everyone, welcome to our webinar today. The topic for this webinar is utility-driven solar projects for low-income customers. This webinar is a presentation of the Sustainable Solar Education Project. This project is managed by the Clean Energy States Alliance, also known as CESA, and it is supported by the U.S. Department of Energy's Sunshot Initiative. Our host for this webinar is Nate Hausman. Nate is a project director here at CESA, and he is going to explain a bit more about our webinar, introduce our panelists. But before I pass it over to Nate, I'd like to go over a few quick housekeeping notes. On your screen, you'll see a little picture that looks something like the webinar console that popped up when you opened the webinar. The orange arrow that you see circled here allows you to expand and minimize the webinar console if you'd like to view the slide presentation full screen. The audio portion of your webinar, just a couple things to point out there. You can either join using your mic and speakers to listen to the audio portion of the webinar. That's the default option, or you can also select telephone if you'd like to call in and listen through your telephone line. If you click on telephone, it will give you some instructions and a call-in number. A very important note, we ask that you please submit your questions as you think of them by typing them into the question box on the webinar console and hitting send. We will be reading through your questions as they come in, and we're going to save about 15 to 20 minutes at the end of the webinar for a Q&A with the audience. And we have a lot of people that we're expecting to attend this webinar. We should be able to get to a lot of questions, but to make sure that we get to your question, type it in when you think of it and don't wait until the very end. A final note, this webinar is being recorded. We will send you an email within about 24 48 hours with a link to the webinar recording and the slides. And you can also find this webinar along with all of our previous Sustainable Solar Education Project webinars on our website at cesa.org/webinars. So with that, I will pass it over to our host for this webinar, Nate Hausman. As I mentioned, Nate is a project director here at CESA.
Great, thank you, Samantha. And before I turn the presentation over to David Castro and Paul Tyno, who are here with us to talk to us today, I want to tell you just a little bit about who CESA is. The Clean Energy States Alliance, or CESA for short, is a national nonprofit network of public agencies and organizations. We work together to advance clean energy. We're made up of mostly state agencies, and you can see some of the logos of our members on this slide. I also want to tell you a little bit about the project that this webinar is happening under. It's called the Sustainable Solar Education Project. And so this webinar, which is on utility-driven solar projects for low-income customers, it's part of this Sustainable Solar Education Project, a CESA-run project to help state and municipal officials ensure distributed solar power remains consumer-friendly and benefits low and moderate income households. Through the Sustainable Solar Education Project, we're developing a lot of resources. I'll talk about some of those resources very briefly, but they're all related to topics on solar consumer protection and solar equitability. The project is funded through the U.S. Department of Energy's Sunshot Initiative. That's their Solar Training and Education for Professionals program, or STEP program. Great, so I mentioned that we're developing a lot of resources. In fact, we've developed a series of 6 guides. We just produced the 6th and final guide in that series today and released it today. We're also doing webinars like this one and producing online course material, in-person trainings. We also put out a free monthly e-newsletter highlighting news and information related to solar consumer protection and equitability from around the country, and you can sign up at the URL at the bottom of this screen. Next. Okay, well, as I mentioned, today's topic is utility-driven models for solar serving low-income customers, and as you know, utilities have taken, in some cases, a leading role on making solar accessible for low and moderate income consumers. So our speakers today are here to talk with us about that. We've got David Castro at the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power and Paul Tyno at the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. I'll introduce them both to you now and then turn it over to David to talk about the LA project, and when he's finished, Paul can take up the torch and talk about the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus project. And then at the end, we'll have time for questions. For the question and answer period, we're also joined by Amy Berry, who's a lead project manager at National Grid, who may be able to help answer some questions about the Buffalo project. So I'll introduce David and Paul. David Castro graduated from the California State University Northridge with a Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering with an emphasis on power systems. David has been with the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power for 3 years and has extensive experience in overhead transmission line design, system protection, large-scale renewable development, and community solar program development. He is currently attending the University of Southern California to complete a Master's of Science degree in electrical power systems and recently passed the professional engineering exam. So that's David. Paul Tyno is a strategic advisor, energy initiatives at the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus, BNMC for short. At BNMC, Paul is responsible for executing the campus energy innovation plan and further developing its overall energy strategy as a collective effort. Paul was a founding member of a prominent third-party provider of demand management resources and a key contributor to another. He was one of 14 individuals invited by FERC to address commissioners and staff during their technical conference for the development of a national action plan on demand response. Paul is the immediate past chairman of the Peak Load Management Alliance, having recently completed his 3rd term. He is a registered party on behalf of BNMC, an active participant in New York's Rev proceeding. City and State Reports recently named Paul an award honoree for its 2016 Corporate Social Responsibility Awards in Tech, Energy, and Utilities. Okay, well, with that, I'll turn it over to you, David. The platform is yours.
All right, thank you, Nate. Also just want to preface the presentation with really just emphasizing that I've been involved with community solar development here at DWP for the last 2 years, and one of the good things that I've seen come out over the last year has really been the emphasis on low income and equity of solar, and so I'm just glad to be able to participate in this discussion. So just to go ahead and dive right into it, here at LADWP, just to kind of start or to give background to sort of the solar paradigm that LADWP currently has. We've had a solar incentive program which is still operating. It's been around for about 10 years and has installed over 200 megawatts of solar and has handed out over $300 million in incentives. We also have a feed-in tariff program which has installed 36 megawatts of solar and is currently developing an additional 30. We have, as a utility, have begun work building utility-built solar systems, and we're at about 25 megawatts for those. And we are also in the process of continuing to acquire large-scale renewable generation, specifically solar. We are soon to be passing the gigawatt range for solar, and it really just kind of builds up that LADWP really is putting an emphasis on renewable energy, specifically solar. We have been humbled enough to be recognized throughout the community for our efforts in this. And early on in our community solar development, we realized that although we're doing a lot of good things for solar, we recognize that there's an area for improvement. And so early on in our development, we took a step back and try to get a sense of how solar was being dispersed throughout our service territory. So in order to accurately capture that on a residential level, we took our solar incentive program, analyzed the data and statistics of that, and built up a solar penetration metric. And that metric is simply the installed solar incentive program capacity, only filtering out residential customers, and divided it by the total number of residential accounts per zip code. So we were able to put an identifier for each zip code. We then grouped those up into 3 groups, A, B, and C, with A being areas of low solar penetration. So over the course of 10 years, we saw that our solar incentive program was not able to reach these specific communities. So we wanted to take action in addressing solar access disparity in the city of Los Angeles. And thankfully, we were able to have support from our city council and our board, which is also pushing forward other equity efforts in different areas of our business and throughout the city. And so we were able to get this started in parallel with those additional equity efforts. And so that kind of builds up the paradigm for why we're doing community solar here in Los Angeles. First and foremost, when any utility wants to move forward with procuring or developing renewable energy, a lot of it, especially here in California, it's really to help meet renewable portfolio standard targets. Second, most importantly, we're simply trying to provide more options for our customers. So again, trying to address what barriers are existing, how can we address those issues, and how can we create a more equitable service. Not only that, the one unique thing that we're doing with the Solar Rooftops program is that we are leveraging our own local labor to be performing the work. We feel that it's a trend that just more distributed energy resources are going to be coming out, and that we need a strong workforce that is knowledgeable and capable of approaching these types of projects and activities in the future. But not only that, we also want to make sure to emphasize the importance of community relationships, because especially in low-income areas, oftentimes the best point of contact for accessing those communities are the community leaders themselves. And so we've had them involved throughout the development process of this program. And again, thankfully, we are blessed here in the city of LA to have full support from the city, our Department of Water and Power utility itself, and then everyone's kind of on the same page with this effort. And so it's really good to see how this effort has evolved over time. So just to get into kind of the nature of our Solar Rooftops program, essentially what the department has proposed for customers is that LADWP will install 2 to 4 kilowatt solar systems on customer rooftops. That is we are purposefully installing smaller systems, and that's simply because we acknowledge the fact that a lot of the low solar penetration areas or low income areas tend to have smaller rooftop spaces available. And so we felt that could be a low-hanging fruit or a good starting point to see how customers would be attracted to this offer. The offer is such, we are offering a fixed monthly lease payment for access of that rooftop space, and we offer the customer $360 per year, regardless of the system size. We did a lot of information gathering in the development of our program, and we realized that one of the challenges for low-income customers to participate has really been just simply the availability of disposable income. So we try to make it as easy as possible for the customer to just simply participate. There's no upfront costs, no credit checks, no background checks. It's just simply if you have a good standing account and your home qualifies, then you'll be evaluated to participate. And then this diagram just simply kind of shows that overall process. Again, the energy system will be connected directly to our grid so that we can count the energy and the associated environmental attributes toward our RPS targets. The customer will continue to receive their standard electric service, and they will also receive the $360 per year for participating in the program. And then here are just a few test installations that we were able to do. Again, just to emphasize that LADWP has not performed this type of residential work in the past, so we are really kind of headed into uncharted territory in terms of what we're asking our labor force to do. And they've been extremely receptive and just quick learning on the process, and we've been able to all come together and really kind of start to see this program slowly start to take off. So here's just one more house that we were able to do. And then again, really just emphasizing that some of the systems that we're trying to install might be on the smaller end of the spectrum. Now, just again, like any solar system that's going to be installed, we want to be able to safely evaluate the home and the rooftop structure to ensure that not only are we providing a safe working environment for our customers, but that the customer will receive a safely installed product as well. So we developed a set of criteria to evaluate both electrical and structural. We work closely with our Department of Building and Safety to develop that criteria. And then we are only targeting owner-occupied homes. And the reason for having only owner-occupied homes is just because of the difficulty of tracking ownership through renting. So if we end up giving a check to 5 different customers, but those 5 homes are owned by the same person, it's kind of difficult to have intimate knowledge of that hierarchy, if you will. So owner-occupied guarantees us that the person that we're doing business with is the recipient of any benefits of this program, and so we wanted to ensure that at all costs. And then we also chose to only do single-story homes, again, simply to allow our workforce to get a little bit more acclimated in this process. This is still something very new and developing, so we felt that performing work on single-story homes would be a good first step into a direction of possibly expanding the program. And then, so just to kind of bring back the discussion of defining low solar penetration, I know that this discussion is purely based on low-income customers. However, I really feel that our program relates because one approach to us attacking the severe solar disparity, we felt a alternative approach instead of only allowing a specific group of customers to participate was to give preferential treatment to customers. So we created essentially 3 groups: low, medium, and high solar penetration. And right now we are currently emphasizing all marketing and outreach to Group A. And so they will have priority enrollment. And so we feel that could create an environment where more consistently low-income customers in Group A could have an opportunity to participate. And then again, us installing in low solar penetration areas really allows us to build a more robust distributed energy system grid for the future, just as assets get a little bit more evenly distributed throughout the service territory. And our overall solar rooftops program process is somewhat straightforward. We have a set of guidelines that can be accessed through our main site. There's an application form, and the customer can submit an interest. I myself have been a part of multiple inspections. LADWP staff will evaluate the applicant's home. We have roofing and electrical construction staff, as well as program managers like myself, to be able to go in there so that we have multiple eyes on one home so that we can come to a consensus on how we would like to evaluate the home. And we just, again, essentially make sure that the home is good to qualify and move on. That we would then request the customer to sign a solar rooftops lease agreement authorizing LADWP to install the solar panel system. We then collect all the inspection data, develop a system plan, move forward with permitting. We pull and work with DBS, the Department of Building and Safety, directly on behalf of the customer. And then once everything is in order, we move forward with construction. And that's sort of the general timeline of it. And so if a customer goes through this process from start to finish, right now it's currently about 1 to 2 months, 1 to 3 months. And again, that kind of fluctuates with how much interest we get. Obviously, administrative tasks are part of just program management. And so we have launched the program since early March. And so over the last few months, we've been able to receive, we're now reaching the 100 mark for applications received, and we've inspected about 30 to 40 homes. And kind of immediately, we kind of get a sense of what are some lessons learned. And right away, the more you go into low-income areas, just inspection rates are going to be low. Pass rates are going to be low. And we believe that that's simply the nature of the availability of disposable income and the willingness for customers to update, upgrade, and even maintain their home. And so sometimes we go in, sometimes the age of the home plays a factor. I know we've been running some ongoing statistics, and I believe for us, for Group A, I believe the average age of a home is about 1930, just to kind of give a perspective and reference for how old some of these homes may be. And so we're trying to work around and find ways that we can try and bring some of the homes in Group A into a better standing. And we're currently trying to develop solutions for that. Also, one of the lessons learned that we took was really trying to emphasize digital inspections, trying to cut down on the use of resources if we don't need to use them, just essentially to create efficiency. And we also learned that for Group A customers, for low-income customers, they are less likely to have internet access or use kind of the upcoming digital trend of outreach and communication with just others, the utility. And so we felt that a physical mailer, postcard, something that they can see as tangible, that's been a little bit more effective. And not only that, but for any utility trying to develop low-income focused programs, I would really encourage you to also create additional educational documents that can accompany whatever program you would like to develop. And that's just simply because for us, fielding calls from hundreds of customers so far, we do spend a lot of time on just simply educating the customer and walking them through sort of what they're buying, what they're getting. And so educational documents can really help. And overall, that's just kind of a quick overview of our Solar Rooftops program, kind of how it started, how we got here, how we developed it, and some of our lessons learned thus far. And from there, I will go ahead and pass it forward to Paul. And thank you for your time.
Great, Paul, the platform's yours.
Great, thank you, Nate. David, thank you for sharing that. I'm going to likely echo a lot of your comments, but it's an interesting way you guys have approached things. I think you'll hear a lot of commonality between our two approaches. I also think you'll hear some distinct differences and make for an interesting conversation. So as David so eloquently said, thank you all for taking the time today and for affording us the opportunity to talk about our opportunity here in Buffalo, New York. My name is Paul Tyno. I'm here on behalf of the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. As referenced earlier, Amy Berry, my peer at National Grid, is also on the line with us. The Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus is a self-sustaining enterprise successfully combining innovation, job creation, and urban revitalization. We serve as the umbrella organization of a group of 9 anchor institutions that make up the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus. We're situated on 120 acres in downtown Buffalo, New York. Our focus really is to foster conversation and collaboration amongst our member institutions, their partners, and the community as a whole to address critical issues impacting them, including energy, entrepreneurship, transportation, workforce, and healthy communities. So just to put it in context a little bit, we are just shy with 2 projects underway now of 10 million square feet. So that houses 150 plus companies and represents about 1.4 billion in public-private investment in this little 120-acre area of Buffalo. Significant new campus construction is underway, and as you can imagine, this growth, and it has been relatively rapid, 10 years actually or less, has had a significant impact on the surrounding community. We will be sitting with about 15,000 employees at the end of 2017 when those other buildings come online. So I think what you have in many respects is we are literally a city within a city at that kind of scale. As you can see by this slide, and I won't walk through all those bullet points, but we are a very active customer, whether it be on the regulatory front, whether it be in partnership with our local utilities, National Grid primarily. And being an urban environment really offers us a living lab opportunity. So I mentioned multiple institutions. They are all independent institutions. There is no single point of governance. So that has its inherent challenges. But again, when you're looking at the initiatives that we're taking on, I think it more accurately reflects real life. And as we work through to solve the technical problems, we also have to look at the business and the social impact of the work that we do as well. As you can see up there, we have 2 Rev demonstration projects. I don't want to assume that everybody on the phone is familiar with Reforming the Energy Vision, which is New York's strategy to spur clean energy innovation, initiated by Governor Cuomo. The Rev Initiative will lead to regulatory changes that promote the more efficient use of energy, deeper penetration of renewable energy resources such as wind and solar, wider deployment of distributed energy resources such as microgrids and rooftop solar, amongst other on-site power supplies, and storage as well. It will also promote markets to achieve greater use of advanced energy management products to enhance demand elasticity and efficiencies. I mentioned the partnership with National Grid. I emphasize that partnership for a couple reasons. One is that I think National Grid deserves some kudos for the fortitude they had in taking on some of the challenges via these Rev demonstration projects, because they took on multiple projects. These are not easy issues to solve. And the only way, in our opinion, to solve these issues is to tackle them through deployment. And you learn far more through deployment than you do through discussion. So a few years back, the BNMC, our member institutions, actually the surrounding neighborhoods as well, and National Grid partnered to develop an energy innovation plan that supports economic development and growth in the region. And that plan integrates energy efficiency, grid modernization, alternative transportation, and renewable energy, driving to develop a sustainable and growing community. So it's our vision through that partnership with National Grid to define a standard for an efficient, modern, high quality, and customer-driven energy platform. So with respect to the Fruit Belt project, the Fruit Belt neighborhood is a community adjacent to the medical campus, community of single and multifamily homes, schools, and community centers. A very challenged neighborhood. Average household income is approximately $23,000, which is less than half of the Buffalo area median income. We find that about 40% of the homes in the Fruit Belt are owner-occupied. That, again, is also slightly lower than the overall Buffalo average. And as a low to moderate income neighborhood, the Fruit Belt is currently underserved by the solar market. As David mentioned, to take advantage of most solar offers, customers need to have a good credit standing and income levels that allow receipt of tax credits. That leaves neighborhoods like the Fruit Belt underserved. At the start of this particular project, there was only a single rooftop solar array in the entire neighborhood, and that was actually donated by Solar Liberty, who was also the partner on this project. and that was installed at the Buffalo City Mission, which is an interfaith institution. So there was no penetration of renewables within the neighborhood. And like other communities that are adjacent to anchor institutions, there is a significant level of distrust as these areas grow. There's issues like gentrification, lack of a voice in planning, etc., that foster this distrust. And that was something we had to work on early on in this project to even get any level of momentum. With respect to the demonstration itself, the Fruit Belt Neighborhood Solar Project is a National Grid Rev demonstration project that we proudly support. It's an effort to bolster the neighborhood's strengths, to build a replicable model, and to regenerate investment. So at a high level, the Community Solar Project seeks to engage the neighborhood through the installation of 100 residential PV systems through a subset of homes that we screen through a combined structural roofing assessment and a solar viability assessment, alongside a comprehensive home energy audit, all conducted by local contractors. Little different than a lot of solar programs out there, but the generation produced by these units is captured in front of the utility meter. It's aggregated collectively and monetized. The resulting revenue in its entirety is then redistributed equally, not only amongst the hosts of the solar itself, but amongst a larger group of community electric accounts. So similar to the concept of a virtual power plant, the predetermined larger set of homes, whether generating or not, receive an equal share of the monetary benefit realized by the solar generation provided back to the grid. So as a result, community residents see a very tangible reduction in the supply portion of their electric bill as a result of the product that they produced and sold. To put it in context, the electric-only bill in that particular neighborhood averages $60 to $65 a month. The credit portion for solar production has a floor of $15 a month. There is obviously some months where that will be better, but there is a floor of $15. So in a lot of cases, that credit represents 20 to sometimes 25% of the electric portion of their bill, which is very, very significant. Now, overall, the initiative does not require an investment on the part of the homeowner or the larger community, whether that's for equipment, installation, or maintenance. There is an allowance set aside to address roof repairs if necessary, or panel upgrades if necessary, and I'll dive into that a little bit more in a few minutes. We're also looking to make sure that we captured the full benefits of solar and additionally connected customers to energy efficiency. So another partner in this project is NYSERDA. National Grid partnered with NYSERDA by integrating an energy efficiency component into the demonstration. Participants and those that are just simply expressed interest are enrolled in energy efficiency programs administered by NYSERDA. If they're eligible for M-Power, energy efficiency upgrades are provided at no cost with in-home education. If they are not eligible for M-Power, they are provided connectivity to programs such as Energy Star's Assisted Home Performance, and they will receive an energy audit through Green Jobs, Green New York. So there is connectivity to other programs. There's also connectivity to city and other funding institutions programs to assist in repair if we find structural defects that exceed the allowance provided by the program itself. So it runs a little bit deeper than normal. So National Grid hypothesizes that providing solar credits to participants as well as offering EE services will further drive bill savings and have a positive impact on bill payment behavior and enable better management of arrears. Additionally, from a grid efficiency piece, physically installing solar assets within a concentrated geographic area and along a common feeder close to the load provides an opportunity to explore grid efficiency benefits. So concentrating that distributed solar within a boundary served by a common substation as opposed to scattered deployment will allow measurable grid, or will allow the ability to measure grid efficiency benefits, including reduction of energy losses, improved voltage monitoring and control, and the monitoring and control of reactive power. So why the BNMC? Since its inception, the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus has engaged our adjacent neighborhoods and has had a focus on investing beyond our campus borders to lift the entire community. Our role here was to assist in connecting National Grid to the neighborhood. Through our 4 neighborhoods, 1 community focus, the Buffalo Niagara Medical Campus had existing relationships and ongoing communication with neighborhood residents and leadership groups. So we utilize that to leverage that to inform and educate about the program. So in essence, we had the tools in place via regularly scheduled meetings. We had a communications platform in place, and maybe more importantly, we had an understanding of the issues within the neighborhood. In terms of where we are to date, we have had, and we got off to a start late last year, and as you may be aware or have heard through the news, sometimes we get inclement weather in Buffalo. So we really didn't hit things hard until September, October of 16. So we have had 14 installations through the end of April of 17. 16 more were installed in May. There are 11 installations scheduled for June, and an additional 11 for July. And then there are 29 in the queue that are at various stages. These customers have all committed to, and their homes have been inspected, so they are all cleared to participate. We're in various stages of doing actual design or maybe some minor repairs or working through the permitting process with the city. And I wanted to share one story there quickly. The allowance for roof repairs and panel upgrades within the program was $2,000 per home. And what we found early on was one extreme or the other. Either we discovered homes that were very, very solid that needed very little, in some cases nothing, to make them solar ready, or we found the opposite extreme where the homes were in bad need of repair, and that the repair cost to make that home solar ready far exceeded the allowance we had incorporated. We didn't find much in between. But surprisingly enough, 13 customers decided to utilize that $2,000 as a catalyst and made the other investment on their own to do the repairs. So it became a pretty significant win. I don't know that any of us really expected that to happen. So not only did we have a home that was solar ready, but we had a home that received significant upgrades in terms of health and safety. So that was an interesting product of the program to date, and certainly one that we didn't expect to see. Regarding lessons learned, and this is a work in progress, but there's certainly been a number of lessons learned. I think for us, the collective team, you know, it's a diverse neighborhood, and they were very skeptical. They certainly had been victims of, I don't want to use the word scams, but they get approached on a regular basis. Many people go door to door in neighborhoods such as that, and things aren't always as they appear. So building trust before we could even really talk about the program, and certainly before adoption, was a significant step that we had to take. We were fortunate enough to find some early champions. You know, residents that we had existing relationships with who were eager to participate and to demonstrate the program to others. And those champions then, through word of mouth, really became the advocates for this program within the neighborhood. They would share with their neighbors, the reasons why they got involved, how the process worked, how they were happy with anything from the installation to the benefit they were receiving, etc. And finding those champions was really the thing that got momentum moving in our direction. Most of our success, again, came with personal contact, whether that was community meetings, we did canvass the neighborhood, participating in other events and not energy related that took place in the neighborhood. So not only did we need to do that, but we found that we needed multiple communications avenues and certainly repetition to kind of build that trust while we were working to educate residents on the program and the benefits of the program. And lastly, I would say we learned that we had to be flexible in our timing, in that communications and approach, and actually to some elements of the program to get people to participate. I think for us, the Rev environment in New York has allowed us to think a little bit differently and to act a little bit differently, which has enabled us to be a little bit more nimble. There certainly are aspects of this program that, absent a Rev environment in the current state, we would not even be able to consider. The utility, National Grid, does own the assets in this particular demonstration. That was a very interesting conversation at the policy level. But this is not a demonstration about a utility owning a generation asset. That was simply a condition to get this program launched to test the hypotheses that I mentioned earlier. And we got that flexibility from the Commission. We got that flexibility from National Grid. We got buy-in and acceptability from the neighborhood, which I think obviously has contributed to the numbers that we've received to date. And we're looking forward to bringing in another 19 customers to get to our 100 or 500 kW of load, which was one of our original targets. And with that, if there's questions for me or Nate, I don't know how you want to drive the Q&A piece.
Yeah, well, first, thanks. I just want to thank you both for your presentations. That was great. I will take questions. I'll direct questions to one or both of you to the extent I can, and feel free to chime in if you have things to add. And Amy, I know you're with us as well, so feel free to chime in too. The first question, I guess, is more of a clarification, and it's for David. Is the customer getting benefit from the solar that you put on their roofs other than the financial benefit from renting their roof? In other words, is it part of a net metering program? Does the homeowner get electricity or electricity credits from the array, or anything other than the sort of $30 per month that you provide?
Sure, and as we've been doing this presentation with a lot of our neighborhood councils and just different stakeholders, this is a common question that comes up, and so I'll sort of elaborate and speak to the value of the credit as well. To answer the first part of the question, no, it's not going to be a net energy metered system. The Department of Water and Power at LA will be the recipient of all energy and environmental attributes. Right now, we are offering customers checks. However, that can evolve into a bill credit, not necessarily an energy credit. And we also get a question asked a lot is, well, why $30? Is that enough? So for us, the inception point for developing a value stems from us investigating and analyzing a lot of the solar contracts that were able to pass through the solar incentive program. So we were able to work with our sister program and essentially analyze a large group of recent contracts from sizes anywhere from 2 to 8. From there, we were able to kind of build up a little bit of a modeling system in terms of what customers are getting, how much they're paying, and then really trying to match that with our rates and forecasting it over time. So as we did sort of this bottom-up analysis in terms of what the customer is getting in value, especially with what the customers here in Southern California are getting in terms of value from other installers, We felt that for the target audience of low to moderate income, which tends to have low to moderate usage, that the savings would be competitive, if not better, than third-party installers installing a system. Obviously, this program is really geared toward, again, the low to moderate area. So obviously, the $30 would not be enough of a value for a customer that has every appliance in the world, has the very large home. Then the value starts to shift toward purchasing your own system, leasing your own system as you go up in usage. So we feel that for our target, this was a good starting point.
Great, and a quick follow-up question for you, David, and then I'll ask some questions of Paul. So are these systems part of your asset base? In other words, how does the LA Department of Water and Power recoup the cost of the program on customers' roofs?
Sure. So mechanisms for us to be able to recover the cost is now we're essentially able to potentially defer distributed energy upgrades. Over time, we've been able to be a part of a lot of distributed energy resources integration studies that are currently going on here. So we hope to be a vehicle for that effort. And not only that, but again, energy is being produced. So it's just essentially putting energy in at different points of the system, which is then bought by our ratepayers.
Great, thanks. A question for Paul about the capital for the Fruit Belt project. Excuse me. Where does that come from?
So as a Rev demonstration project, the Public Service Commission approved the budget and the expenditure for this particular demonstration, as they do with all the Rev demonstration projects. Amy, I don't know if that was as eloquent an answer as I could have provided.
That was perfect.
And a follow-up on that, between the grid benefits, does the Fruit Belt project have the potential to save more money for National Grid than it costs? From a purely financial standpoint, is this a good investment for National Grid, or could it be?
And that's what we're going to uncover. I think we went into this project not presupposing outcomes. And I made a reference earlier in my comments about deployment versus discussion. And it's a good opportunity to engage this community and introduce them to solar. At the same time, it gives National Grid an opportunity to understand those potential grid efficiency benefits. And there are a number of tests involved with the grid efficiency piece, which will start underway once we're fully deployed, or at least reasonably fully deployed, so that they can better understand those impacts. Then they can start to weigh the value of those impacts versus traditional methodologies to offset potentially a problem. And not so much, again, to address a problem within the Fruit Belt, but is this replicable so that we have ongoing value and it's not a one-off science project, if I can. And that's really the key. If there is a efficiency benefit here, then the market then will help drive this solution and further deployment. It'll move us away from an incentive-based criteria to a market-driven solution, I think, which works better for everyone.
Thanks. Okay, this is a question that I've sort of gotten on for both of you. So maybe I'll ask it directly to both of you. Who maintains the installations? Who's the owner? Who maintains the installations? And what happens in the case that a homeowner, there's a home transfer? So maybe I'll start with David, and then we can shift to Paul.
Sure. Again, just to try and assess what barriers are existing for customers, I know through surveys and focus groups, I know that a lot of our target audience was not specifically interested in heavy involvement in operation and maintenance. So the Department of Water and Power will be the operators, maintainers, and owners of that system for the duration of the lease agreement. If an event happens where a customer chooses to buy a new home, move from the service territory, whatever it may be, they will have, the incoming homeowner will have the opportunity to either continue in place of the existing lease for the previous homeowner. If the existing homeowner does not want it, then the Department of Water and Power will send its own resources out to uninstall that system and recoup the equipment that was installed.
And Nate, very similar here in Buffalo. So National Grid owns the asset, is responsible for operations and maintenance. They have agreed to operate and maintain that equipment for the life expectancy of the equipment, which we pegged at 25 years. Solar Liberty will manage that aspect of things for them. At the end of that period of time, the homeowner then will have the option to keep the equipment and enter into an agreement of their choosing with another third party. The equipment can be removed and the roof restored, absent that the solar array, and that the cost will be absorbed by National Grid. And similar with respect to ownership transfer, we've actually had homes change hands already, even though we're early in the deployment stage. And I want to say 3, and apologies if I'm not dead on, but I think in those transactions, each of the new homeowners have opted to remain in the program and keep the equipment.
Great, thanks. Paul, a question for you about sort of the mechanics of how you mentioned these systems are in front of the meter. How does that work, the mechanics of that?
So I am not an engineer. There's a generation meter in front of the utility meter that captures the generation produced by the solar array. And then that is aggregated together from the arrays in the neighborhood, and then, as I said, divided equally amongst not only the host but a broader group. And I maybe didn't explain that piece of it as well as I could have during my presentation. That expanded group is a group of homeowners or residents who raised their hand and expressed interest, but for a reason likely not in their control, such as the house not being oriented the right way, maybe some shading issues, etc., they were not actually eligible upon assessment to participate as a host. But part of the demonstration is the look at where that money goes, and if they participate in the benefit, does that make them more engaged in energy efficiency efforts? They'll still have the same connectivity to those energy efficiency opportunities, and does that help us get traction in that neighborhood with respect to those type of initiatives? So that is also part of the demonstration assessment. I know that probably wasn't as technical as a response as you would hope, Nate.
No, that's plenty technical enough for me, thanks. Question, and I'll actually ask this to both of you, about advertising your programs and sort of the marketing. And a specific component of the question asks about the Federal Trade Commission has some guidance on what is renewable and whether or not you're actually using that renewable attribute. And has that been any kind of hurdle in advertising either of your programs?
Sure, I'll go ahead and start off. I know that just in regards to sort of wording, renewable, is it renewable, and how you kind of language any type of agreement or proposal with the customer. I know that's been brought up a lot more in discussion with our shared solar program that we're developing, which is sort of, the large scale solar out in the middle of the desert, and energy subscribers can subscribe to that. We feel that there's been a lot more hurdles in that area of our development, simply because you're really exchanging energy for money. In this area, we were simply explicit that it's a rooftop lease, and that the environmental attributes will be owned by us for renewable compliance with the state.
So Amy, can you field that one? I wasn't on that side of the project development as actively. Sorry to put you on the spot.
No, that's all right. Sure. We actually aren't using renewable. We just, when we marketed the programs to our customers, we just talked about the specifics of what was actually going to happen and the technology that we were using. Is that what you're asking, if we marketed with the word renewable?
Yeah, I think it's getting at that, but I'll ask sort of a broader question also, and I'll let anybody take a crack at it. But just, you know, has the sort of uptake and the response in the community been what you've expected for both programs? You know, how has your uptake been? I mean, I think Paul, you mentioned, you know, in some cases there's been some suspicion around folks doing evaluations and evaluating rooftops. What's the reception you've met for both programs?
So for us here in Buffalo, those were some early obstacles, and I don't know that we were blindsided by those. I think we anticipated that. Maybe it took us a little while or a little longer than we would have hoped to overcome them. I emphasized the need for champions within the community when I spoke. That's really what got things moving for us, is when it was more of a peer-to-peer conversation within the neighborhood, then it was looked at through a different lens in a good way, and that really started to move things. Certainly going door to door, more of a grassroots approach, talking to people as opposed to presenting to people, made a big difference as well. When you married a lot of those factors together, we did start out slow. We were all, I think, very concerned about how we started out. We had nothing to look at, to mirror, so I don't know if that was even a reasonable expectation, but we were concerned. But once a few things fell into place, we remained in contact through the winter, which I think was very important. That was a huge positive decision on National Grid's part to continue communication and connectivity through the winter, so we were in touch. People didn't lose sight of the program or the opportunity during that season. So we had a lot of people ready to jump on board who did their preliminary consideration during that time frame and came on board in the spring. I think we're thrilled to death. I'll speak on behalf of the campus of it. I think National Grid would agree. We're thrilled to death with the number of systems that are going to be going up and the difference that it has made, and it's very exciting to see.
And I would also just like to add to Nate's good point that there's nothing really replicable that we can point to in terms of like a strategy that this was extremely effective or worked. And so we've sort of gone through that same kind of trial and error process. I always kind of joke around with my colleagues, you know, there's no Ohm's law, there's no formula for specifying how this is going to play out. And so that's one of the things that we've tried to do as well is we were able to work with our marketing and outreach staff to develop sort of a timeline of making sure that we're in the community, in the neighborhood councils early before we do a lot of the digital outreach, whether through social media or an email blast. And then again, lessons learned was just simply that a lot of the low to moderate income customers, just specifically here in Los Angeles, were a little bit more receptive to a physical mailing outreach. And that was just, again, some of our lessons learned.
Great. Well, we are very close to the top of the hour here, and so I think I'm going to cut it there. I apologize that we didn't get to there's a lot of questions out there still looming, and we didn't get to all of them, but we did get to some good ones, and so I appreciate everybody tuning in. Before we sign off, I want to give David and Paul and perhaps Amy just any sort of final words, synopsis, just a sentence or two from each of you, if you have one.
Sure, I'll go ahead and start off. Just really quick comment, just simply that, one, we're definitely humbled and excited to be able to be a part of this discussion and involving and creating equity for solar for low to moderate income customers. And second, just maybe in my personal opinion, I really think that in order for any of these efforts to really succeed, again, you need to kind of try to understand if it's feasible, if it's replicable, and not only that, but you need buy-in from almost everybody involved, whether it be the state, the city, your board of commissioners, whatever stakeholders you have. If you can all get on the same page for an action, that leads to greater success.
You know, and I would add to that collaboration is a powerful tool. And we worked with the city. We obviously National Grid was driving this. We worked with leadership groups within the community. We discussed the program in advance of actually drafting the program with residents within the community to make sure we were on the right track. There's a lot of stakeholder involvement across the board from start to finish. Collaboration is definitely key. And I think especially within the utility, there were a lot of challenges to traditional thinking. So for us, I think the success was inherently tied to the ability of all the partners to think a little bit differently and to challenge the norm.
Great. Well, thank you. Thank you for those words, and thanks for your presentations today. Both excellent projects and excellent overviews. I want to thank everybody for being on today's webinar. Also gotten a couple questions about some of CESA's resources, and just wanted to remind folks that we've got an e-newsletter that can keep you apprised of some of the information and news from around the country on solar consumer protection and equitability that we're producing. And also we have some upcoming webinars. In fact, we've got a webinar on solar risk and how energy storage can help preserve some of those solar savings in affordable housing. That's next Thursday, June 15th, and then one on consumer protection for community solar based on a guide we released today, and that'll be the following Thursday from 1 to 2 p.m. Eastern Time. So you can sign up for those webinars at the URL on the bottom of the screen. To Sam for a closeout then.
Great. Thank you, Nate, and thanks everybody for joining us for this webinar today and our guest speakers for their presentations. I would like to draw your attention to some of the resources, some of the links and contact info that you see on your screen now if you'd like to follow up with more questions and hear more about what CESA and the Sustainable Solar Education Project are doing. We encourage you to visit our website and connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. I also wanted to, in addition to our upcoming webinars, I wanted to just give you an overview of some of the guides that we've produced. Please feel free to check those out and do visit our website for those. So that's it for us today. Thanks everybody for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one.